My passion is to make great coffee easy, fun, and approachable to a lot of people. And I mean like millions of people. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a couple of failures that I've had on this mission, journey, a couple of insights that we learned recently, and why I think that not selling coffee can actually help you sell more coffee. To me, coffee is a really concrete way of making somebody's day better. That's what I love about it. And this was the thinking, the philosophy behind my first cafe that I opened in Helsinki about 2.5 years ago. I wanted to make it a world-class coffee destination where people could come in and experience everything that coffee could be. But ultimately, our goal was to make their day better. And the way we do that is through serving them good coffee and empathy. Now, this approach resonated with our customers pretty well, but financially the cafe was a failure. It was tiny, only 12 seats, and was located on a quiet street in a sleepy residential neighborhood in central Helsinki. I was also really frustrated by how unscalable running such a small cafe is. You work every day to get everything set up, and then you got to do it all again next day. And at max, we could make maybe 100 people happy a day. Doesn't really change the world the way I want it to. It was making enough money to keep the lights on, but nowhere near enough to pay myself a living wage. So about a year ago, 18 months after we opened our doors, I made the toughest decision in my life so far. And with heavy heart and much of my customers' dismay, decided to close the cafe. I spent the next couple of months figuring out what I wanted to do next and training for the World Barista Champs in Seattle. I was on my way back on the plane when I was feeling pretty desperate for some caffeine. And now, I never have coffee on planes, because we all know it sucks, right? But I was just desperate enough to give it a go, and very soon I regretted that decision. But that got me thinking, would there be a way for me to enjoy good coffee right here on the plane? Wouldn't that be the ultimate way of making great coffee easier and more accessible? So ultimately, that led me to work on instant coffee. That doesn't suck. I studied food sciences at university before dropping out to make coffee, and I had a kind of a pretty good idea of how I would start approaching it. So the idea was simple. Combine everything we love about specialty coffee, the story, the flavor, everything that's cool about it, and everything why we're here, with the convenience of instant coffee. Turns out that can be done, and last October I did what every university or college dropout dreams of doing and moved to San Francisco and set up a startup and started making instant coffee in a garage. We literally made it in a garage. Nick Cho's garage, to be precise. But what is instant coffee, actually? Basically, it's just liquid coffee that's been dehydrated. And the issue with it is that the huge companies that have made it so far do an extremely good job at making it consistent, making it cheap, and marketing it well. In some countries, it's a luxury product. But the truth is that it starts with not the ideal beans. And then it's extracted, which is an important part of it. And it's also not done in the quite ideal way. So when we talk about extraction, a very important thing is extraction yield. And that basically means how much stuff you get out of the bean by weight. So if you extract the coffee and you would dry and weigh the beans, that number tells you how much you lost mass. And it's usually quite difficult to explain, so I tried to figure out an easier way to do that. So basically, you want to aim to the middle. You want to get to the party. So 20% is the sweet spot you want to get to. Now, instant coffee is usually extracted up to 60%, like 3 times as much, by extracting it at an incredibly high temperature. And that makes total sense if you want to make a lot of coffee and sell it cheaply, and I don't blame them for doing that. That just means that you don't get the ideal flavors. So starting from this point, The flavor profile is not necessarily sort of what we call specialty. And I actually ran a quick Gallup on Facebook among my friends, and I got 52 replies in one day. And here are some of my favorite ones. When I asked them, how does instant coffee taste to you? Somebody said that it's like drinking the remains of a medicine cabinet caught in a house fire. Hollow like a black hole. Lauantai-makkara, which is a very special Finnish sausage that might be okay on its own, but definitely not in coffee. So coming to this, we're two dudes making instant coffee that we claim to be awesome in a garage in San Francisco. And this is people's idea of instant coffee. And then we try to change that. So talking about marketing challenges. I also studied marketing at university, but it's not really help for stuff like this. Trying to sell something that could be the very definition of an oxymoron. We launched this January, and we had a surprisingly amazing, really great welcoming from the coffee industry. But very soon we realized that we were failing to reach the larger audience we wanted to. The people we wanted to reach, the people why we started working on this in the first place. And we didn't really even know who we were selling it to and what they wanted. So we decided to do some customer research. We interviewed 87 people. We did about half an hour qualitative interviews, asking the same question set for everyone. Roughly 1/3 were our existing customers, 1/3 prospects, so people who had heard of our product but hadn't tasted it yet, and 1/3 random people who've never heard of it before. Our sample was slightly skewed towards male, and we interviewed people in 19 different cities in 10 countries. Existing customers and prospects we interviewed over phone. So I basically sent them a calendar link to book a time slot in my calendar, and 1 week I made 42 phone calls. And then for the random people, we wanted to hit the pavement and went out to cafes and just started interviewing them. So we went to second wave shops like Starbucks and Pete's, as well as third wave like Phil's, Blue Bottle, and Ritual Coffee in San Francisco. Now we discovered a variety. I mean, first of all, the research was super insightful. I wish we would have done it sooner. We discovered several subsets among all the coffee drinkers we interviewed. Everything from super hardcore coffee enthusiasts to pretty function-driven Nescafe drinkers. We created fictional personas for all of the subgroups. And the one that emerged as the most interesting one for us was what we named Michelle. Now, Michelle likes good coffee, but she's not a coffee enthusiast. We would ask her what she would drink, where she goes, and she goes to what we would call specialty shops or third wave coffee shops. But she wouldn't use those terms. She would use a good coffee shop, the trendy one or whatever. And like why? The reason was basically that it's lightly roasted, or how she described it to be better. She doesn't really know or understand what happens before a coffee gets to the cafe, and she's not necessarily interested in that either. She cares about that the coffee is handmade for her, but she's not willing to get under the hood what happens throughout our supply chain, or at least that's what we thought. And she wants to learn more about coffee, but it's not made very easy for her. Now, she drinks 2 cups of coffee a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. The morning coffee is really integral part of her morning ritual or routine. It's part of waking up. So depending on the location, she would drink it at home or brew it at home or drink it on her way to work, grab it to go. And that would be usually a filter coffee, either black or with some milk. And there, the important parts are caffeine and just like getting in, having her morning to worked out. She doesn't want anybody or anything to interfere with that. One person said that if anything goes wrong with my morning coffee, it's like not brushing my teeth in the morning. Something's off for the whole day. Now, the afternoon coffee is much more about comfort and taking a break. It's usually at 2 p.m., 2 to 3 p.m. after lunch. She gets out of the office, if she has the time, and grabs a coffee at the nearby good coffee shop with her coworkers. Now, this drink is usually an espresso-based milk drink, like latte or a cappuccino or a flat white. It's much more about the break and the comforting factor in the coffee and connecting with other people over coffee, so sharing it with a friend. we found out that she spends $89 in coffee per month, which is a staggeringly high number. We weren't expecting that. And that was all around the world, not just in San Francisco, which is insanely expensive. She's in her 20s or 30s, like myself, and would be called a millennial. And there are several studies that show that millennials outspend every other generation when it comes to food and coffee, basically. So this wasn't so surprising. A larger study by TD Bank just found out that millennials spend roughly $80 in coffee per month. So it's pretty much in line. Now, when we asked if you could wave a wand and change or improve any 3 things in your coffee experience, what would you like to change? Basically, the 3 things that came out, 3 things that she really cares in her coffee experience, are actually pretty simple. She wants good coffee, she wants that conveniently and consistently. Not super hard, right? Good coffee, conveniently and consistently. When we asked, is there anything you don't like in your coffee experience, in the coffee world? Staggeringly, we were blown away by this. 7 out of 10 people, out of all we interviewed, said basically one of the 3 things: pretentiousness, elitism, and snobism. So let me recap that. We have this huge amount of people, audience, the millennials, that every brand is basically after of right now. She's spending $90. She's willing to give you $90 a month for coffee, which is a lot of money. She likes good coffee, she wants it conveniently and consistently, which is not that hard, right? But she's put off by the pretentiousness and elitism and snobism. And I mean, now I'm talking about our approach. That's what we fell into. I'm talking about the coffee in a way she didn't understand. No wonder she wasn't buying awesome instant coffee, because we were describing a single origin heirloom variety grown wild in Forest of Agaro, blah, blah. If what you want is good coffee consistently and conveniently, that's not necessarily what you're looking for right now. So in order to make this actionable for us and actually figure out how we're not going to fall into the sort of this pitfall again, and how to avoid this, we created a framework to help understand her needs and wants when it comes to coffee. And the first one is caffeine. Whether we like it or not, most of us are more or less addicted to caffeine. You drink coffee in the morning so you don't get a headache. And it's the same for Michelle. That's the first thing she wants in the morning. And if the only thing you want is caffeine, you're not so receptible to hear about the new processing method this coffee has gone through. Second thing is ritual. And ritual is actually the word she would use for the routine. That creates a safety around her morning coffee experience. Allows your brain to work on autopilot, do things without thinking. And there's more and more research that that's incredibly important for your brain. So you can save that mental energy for something more important down the day. And third is the social connection. Connecting with other humans over coffee. Whether it's Michelle and the barista, or Michelle and her peers on the same side of the bar, sharing the coffee. Fourth is the brand, and this is interesting. Now, she goes to good coffee shops, but once a coffee shop is determined to be good, she cannot really differentiate the coffees. They're all kind of lightly roasted to her, whether it's Blue Bottle or Phil's, which is a little more old school, or Ritual, which is kind of more lighter roasted than any of those. That doesn't really matter to her. If she goes to a shop and the coffee is rotated and changed, she doesn't necessarily notice the differences. So it comes down to the brand, how she perceives that company's values, what are the values and the sort of the brand she wants to be associated with. And it's both kind of inner and outer perception of the brand. So how do I think about myself when I go to this place? I want to be somebody who goes to Blue Bottle, for example, and how other people perceive her as somebody who goes there. That's very important. And on top of all of these is what I call specialty factors, which is all the things that make specialty special. That's why we're here. Without that tip of the pyramid, specialty wouldn't exist. That would just be second wave, generic mainstream coffee. But the thing is that here's the disconnect. All of these things are more important to Michelle than the specialty stuff. But we realized that we had been focusing too much on the specialty. What makes this coffee special? What's the story? And so on. And that can easily come across as pretentious and elitist and snobby. And we realized afterwards that this maps very closely to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a classic motivational theory developed by psychologist Abraham Maslow in the 1950s. Now, in order to make sure this doesn't happen to us again, we reevaluated our company values. What do we have to really hold dear, close to our heart, to make Michelle happy? And those things are empathy, curiosity, and being humble. We have to be humble enough to understand and admit that we actually don't know what she wants. We don't know everything. I thought I knew who we were selling to. I've been working in coffee for so many years that I thought that, of course I know my customers. But during the first interview, that proved wrong. And then we did 87 more. And then we have to be curious enough to understand what she actually needs. How can we serve her better? And have the empathy of doing that. I believe that our business is actually not selling coffee. So Michelle gives us money, and we give her coffee, but that's not what she's paying for. She's paying us to fulfill her needs and make her day better, not for the coffee. Coffee is just the vehicle to deliver those experiences to her. It's not about pushing information to people. That's going to put them off. We believe that the better way is being curious and being empathetic and being humble and building trust by acknowledging that there are all these other things that are more important to her, that are her needs. And eventually, I mean, she wants to learn, but we're making it difficult for her. If we build the trust and make it easy for her to ask questions and become interested in what we're so excited about specialty coffee, then that works. And also, if she doesn't become, that's fine. Not everybody has to be a coffee enthusiast. If she's buying specialty coffee, that's just as good for our whole supply chain as if she was super excited about it. Not everybody has to be a coffee enthusiast. And I finish with a quote from one of our customers. Worry more about the person, not so much about the product. Thank you.